Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor. My name is Reverend Drew Moeller, and it is a pleasure to be with you here in the sanctuary and with those of you who are joining us this morning on Zoom. It is a pleasure to be here. It's a little hard right now for me to be back. I've been gone for the last 2 weeks as I help my father transition into the mystery of whatever comes after this life. But can truly say I am grateful to be back here with all of you, and extremely grateful for the amount of support that this community has shared with cards and texts and phone calls, and also gratitude for my colleague, Reverend Charles Stevens, who, when I told him I needed to be away, showed up 2 weeks ago to grace our pulpit at a very short notice. So it truly is great to be with you here on this warm autumn morning, and I look forward to worshiping with you together. Before we get started, I want to invite Phyllis Havens to come forward and offer several announcements.
I know we're all very happy to have you back, Drew. My glasses are fogged, oh dear. Boy, this is when things really get busy in our community as the season advances and we get closer to Christmas, and we have a lot going on. Maybe I'll start with outside. We have fall cleanup happening on next Saturday, I guess the 19th. The 19th, okay. Two Saturdays, okay. So if you've done that in the past, you know what to do. You show up with rakes and whatever you ever wind up showing up with, and help out raking and bagging and getting the outside looking as lovely as is reflected from what we have here in the inside. We have a dire need, speaking of second Sundays, for people to sign up for collecting the food. Judy and Tim Martin did this for so long, and we were so grateful. And then the youth did that for a while, but we really need people to sign up. It's the second Sunday, 11:30 to 12:30 or so. And Valerie Carter has created a chart to put up. She's put it up in the Dorothy, and please look at it and see if you or your family might sign up for a Sunday. It's just one Sunday a month. It's the second Sunday where you put the bins out and people come to deliver food. We've started collecting some here also in our baskets in the sanctuary. It's also the time for drumming that same day, next Sunday, the 13th. So we have drumming circles starting at 11:30 with Lori and Leanne and Jim Simcoe. Also, this is a time for raffles. We have our auction baskets, which will be done online by Zoom on the 10th of December. Kathy Elliott needs pictures of your baskets and the list of contents by the 18th. I think that's Friday the 18th. And she'll be putting up the slideshow for us for the Zoom event. We also have a throw blanket, which is being raffled off, sort of going along with those baskets. It's a $1 a ticket, 6 tickets for $5. So that's another fundraiser for us. And the big one starting next Sunday is the Imagine raffles, $20 a ticket. And that is going to be sold by whom?
They're going to be for sale in the Dorothy, and we need everybody to take tickets and sell them. We need to raise $15,000. So everybody, plan on picking up packets of tickets in the Dorothy before and after service next Sunday.
There's a little bit more information on it online on our e-weekly news. For $20 tickets, if you win, you get $5,000 to basically do whatever you want. Travel, fix your house up, do whatever. So I think I've covered everything. And we will turn it back over to Reverend Drew. Actually, we'll go to Jack for the introit.
There is a season, turn, turn.
Now, Judy, it is the time for lighting our chalice. Judy, can you come forward? Mark, maybe you'd like to walk with her. Could you please do that? As we light our chalice, let us reflect on the space within. 30 spokes share the wheel's hub. It is the center hole that makes it useful. Shape clay into a vessel. It is the space within that makes it useful. Cut doors and windows for a room. It is the holes that make it useful. Therefore, profit comes from what is there, usefulness from what is not there. Blessed be. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Judy. I walk the unfrequented road. Let's open our hymn with song. Any wee ones that want to join Reverend Drew on the rug, please come down now. And anyone larger than a wee one can come down too.
Yes. And as folks are coming down, I noticed that when I opened up our little magic rug here this morning, there are some new names on that rug. Our SE youth a couple weeks ago added some names to it, and I think we're going to do a little dedication in a couple weeks, maybe in December, of the rug with all these new names. All right. Okay, so there's going to be some pictures up on the screen, so I don't have to hold the book up to you to read, but this is a book called Frederick by Leo Leone. This is actually one of my favorite childhood books. My mom could not read this to me enough. So let's go to, hi! So let's go to the first slide here. All right, there we go. All along the meadow where the cows grazed and the horses ran, there was an old stone wall. Hi. In that wall, not far from the barn and granary, a chatty family of field mice had their home. But the farmers had moved away, and the barn was abandoned, and the granary stood empty. And since winter was not far off, the little mice began to gather corn and nuts and wheat and straw. All that is, except Frederick. Frederick, why don't you work? They asked. Oh, I do work, said Frederick. I gather sun's rays for the cold, dark winter days ahead. And when they saw Frederick sitting there, staring at the meadow, they said, "And now, Frederick?" He said, "I gather colors, for the winter will be very dark and gray." And once Frederick seemed half asleep. "Are you dreaming, Frederick?" they asked. But Frederick said, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm gathering words, for the winter days will be very long and will probably run out of things to say." You're not sure that's true, huh? Well, life of a mouse might be a little different. Yeah. So the winter days came, and the first snow fell, and the 5 little field mice took their hideout in the stones. In the beginning, there was lots to eat, and the mice told stories of foolish foxes and silly cats, and they were a big, happy family. But then, little by little, they had nibbled up most of the nuts and berries, and the straw was gone, and the corn was only a memory. It was cold in the wall, and no one felt much like chatting. Then they remembered Frederick and what he had said about the sun's rays and the colors and the words. "What about your supplies, Frederick?" they asked. "Close your eyes," said Frederick, as he climbed onto a big stone. "Now I send you the rays of the sun. Do you feel their golden glow?" And as Frederick spoke, the sun, the 4 little mice somehow started to become a little warmer. Was it Frederick's voice, or was it magic? "And how about the colors, Frederick?" they asked anxiously. "Close your eyes again," Frederick said, and he told them of the blue periwinkles and the red poppies and the yellow wheat and the green leaves on the berry bush. And they saw the colors as clearly as if they had been painted in their own minds. "And the words, Frederick?" Frederick cleared his throat, waited a moment, and then, as if on a stage, said, "Who scatters the snowflakes? Who melts the ice? Who spoils the weather and who makes it nice? Who grows the 4-leaf clovers in June? Who dims the daylight? Who lights the moon? 4 little field mice who live in the sky, 4 little field mice like you and I. One is a spring mouse who turns on the showers. Then comes the summer who paints all the flowers. The fall mouse is next with walnuts and wheat, and the winter is last with little cold feet. Aren't we lucky that the seasons are 4? Think of a year with one less or one more." When Frederick finished, they all applauded, and said, "But Frederick, you are a poet." And Frederick blushed a little bit, stood up, took a bow, and said, "I know it."
You lazy.
So that's our story today, and I think I'd like this because it's a lot of times when we see other people doing things that we don't quite understand, maybe they're doing something that's very wise and very helpful later on. And so It helps sometimes to approach it with curiosity, like these little field mice who went about their business, did their own gathering, but also were curious to ask Frederick later on what he was doing and why he was doing it, and how that enriched all, not just Frederick's life, but all of their lives. So with that, let us sing you down to your classes so you can with your friends and your teachers. Now is the time in our service where we pause for a moment to open our hearts to each other and this beloved community, to share the joys and sorrows that make up the very fabric of our lives. This is a special sacred time, a time to listen deeply, to speak your truth, and to be held by this beloved community. If you have it. So finally, I light one last candle for all the joys and sorrows that remain within the deep recesses of our hearts, and those that are ever present just below the surface. May they find hope, love, connection, and may they find a nonviolent release. Dear friends, please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Great universal Spirit, interconnected web of which we are a part, we gather today in this time, in this space, to hold up the sorrows and the joys that touch our hearts in deep and profound ways. Today we hold in our hearts loved ones who have passed, both peacefully and those in not so peaceful ways. We hold loved ones who are struggling and beginning to face the end of their life journey, and we pray that they are able to make that transition without much suffering and with lots of love and support. Spirit, we also hold in our hearts those who are infirm, those who are sick, those who are awaiting surgery, those who are dealing with chronic disease and illnesses, and those in our midst who are getting over COVID and RSV virus. Spirit, we also celebrate with great joy the defending of PhD dissertation and the excitement of launching out in a new career, a sense of accomplishment, and also a way of bringing new knowledge to light of how we can live better in relationship with the earth. Spirit, we are grateful for this community. We are grateful to have this place where we can bare our souls to one another, where we can be vulnerable and speak our truth. We do this because we know that each life tells an important story. Each life holds a deep and abiding truth. By coming together and sharing these joys and sorrows, we honor each other and we honor you by slowly and eventually becoming one. Blessed be. Amen. We gather our gifts, but not for ourselves alone. And so at this point in our service, we will be taking our offertory. And as we do so, know that we are sharing half of the money that we collect with. Can anybody help me out? Because I did not look that up in my Panquist fuel assistance. So half of the money that we gather will go to assist people who need help paying their fuel bills this winter. So we, as always, encourage you to give as generously as possible. Thank you.
The reading this morning is called "The Things They Carried," adapted by a writing by Tim O'Brien. First Lieutenant Jimmy Cross carried letters from a girl named Martha, a junior at Mount Sebastian College in New Jersey. They were not love letters, but Lieutenant Cross was hoping, so he kept them folded in plastic at the bottom of his rucksack. The letters weighed 10 ounces. The things they carried were largely determined by necessity: P38 can openers, pocket knives, heat tabs, wristwatches, dog tags, mosquito repellent, chewing gum, cigarettes, salt tablets, packets of Kool-Aid, sewing kits, sea rations, and 2 or 3 canteens of water. Together, these items weighed between 15 and 20 pounds, depending on the man's habits and his rate of metabolism. Henry Dobbins, who was a big man, carried extra portions. Dave Jensen, who practiced field hygiene, carried a toothbrush, dental floss, and several hotel-sized bars of soap. Ted Lavender, who was scared, always carried tranquilizers. Because it was standard operating procedure, they all carried the steel helmets that weighed 5 pounds, including the liner and the camouflage cover. They carried the standard fatigues and trousers. On their feet, they carried jungle boots, 2.5 pounds. Norman Bowker carried a diary. Rat Kiley carried comic books. Kiowa, a devout Baptist, carried an illustrated New Testament and his grandmother's distrust for the white man and his grandfather's old hunting hatchet. It was standard operating procedure for each man to carry a steel-centered, nylon-covered flak jacket, which weighed 6.7 pounds, but which on hot days seemed much heavier. Because it was cold and wet, each carried a green plastic quilted poncho that could be used as a raincoat, a ground sheet, or makeshift tent. The poncho weighed almost 2 pounds, but it was worth every ounce. They were all called legs or grunts. To carry something was to hump it, as when Lieutenant Jimmy Cross carried his love for Martha up the hills and through the swamps. Most everyone carried photographs. What they carried was partially a function of rank, partly of field specialty. As first lieutenant and platoon leader, Jimmy Cross carried a compass, maps, code books, binoculars, pistol that weighed 29 ounces. He carried a strobe light and the responsibility for the lives of his men. As a medic, Rat Kiley carried a canvas satchel filled with morphine, plasma, malaria tablets, and surgical dressing and instruments. He carried all the things a medic must carry for a total weight of nearly 20 pounds. As a big man, Henry Dobbins carried the M60, which weighed 23 pounds unloaded, which was almost always loaded. As private first classes or Spec 4s, most of them carried standard M16 rifles, which weighed 8.2 pounds loaded, plus the unweighted fear. What they carried varied by mission. When the mission took them to the mountains, they carried mosquito netting, machetes, canvas tarps, and extra bug juice. If a mission seemed especially hazardous, they carried everything they could. Where the land was dense with mines, they took turns humping a 28-pound mine detector. It was often useless because of the shrapnel in the earth, but they carried it anyway, partly for safety, partly as an illusion of safety. On the other night missions, they carried particular little odds and ends. Kiowa always took along his New Testament and the pair of moccasins for silence. Dave Jensen carried night sight vitamins high in carotene. Lee Strunk carried a slingshot. Rat Kiley carried brandy and M&M's candy. They all carried ghosts. They carried USO stationery and pens. They carried sterno, safety pins, signal flares, razor blades, chewing tobacco, and statuettes of the smiling Buddha, fingernail clippers, biop leaflets, and much more. Some things they carried in common. Taking turns, they carried the big PRC-77 Scrambler radio, which weighed 30 pounds with the battery. They shared the weight of memory. They took up what others could no longer bear. Often they carried each other, wounded or weak. They carried the land itself, Vietnam, the place, the soil, a powdery orange-red dust on top of their boots and knees and their faces. They carried the sky, the whole atmosphere they carried, the humidity, the monsoons, the stink fungus and decay, all of it. They carried gravity. They moved like mules. The war was entirely a matter of posture and carriage. The hump was everything, a kind of inertia, a kind of emptiness, a dullness of desire in intellect and conscience and hope and human sensibility. Their principles were in their feet. Often they would discard things along the route of the march, but no matter, because by nightfall the resupply chopper would arrive with more of the same. And for all the ambiguities of Vietnam, all the missed reason, there was at least a single abiding certainty that they would never be at a loss for things to carry.
With a change
Thank you, choir, Molly, for your wonderful gift of music and a nice way of lightening ourselves after that really intense reading. And you'll note that the topic of the service has changed a little bit. So I'm doing a service that is a little bit more celebrating some of Veterans Day, but also some of the wisdom that comes from that reading by Tim O'Brien. When I first came across this fictional story, The Things They Carried by Vietnam veteran Tim O'Brien, I was impressed by his ability to capture the experience of infantrymen in the jungles of Vietnam in a way that makes you feel almost like you were there. As a foot soldier, he makes it clear that everything had to be carried. Most of what they carried was by necessity, he said. And if you added up all the things that the soldiers in that platoon had to carry on a daily basis, you would come up with a number between 60 and 70 pounds worth of gear per person. That's a lot of stuff. It is an impressive accomplishment for anyone to carry that much weight, even if you are young and in good shape. What really hit me was that despite the heavy loads that they, quote, humped through the jungles and the countryside daily, they all seemed to find space to carry some extra thing, something that reminded them of home or of a loved one, something that spoke to an interest, something that provided insight into who these men were as people. These items may have been small, but they were the only things that differentiated them from the olive drab grunts, as O'Brien finally called them in his story. It was these things, the potential straw that could break a person's back, that actually made them human. I found myself asking these questions like, why did one man choose to carry extra socks instead of a Bible? Why a comic book instead of extra rations? What's the story behind Kiowa and his father's hatchet? The metaphor is a very simple one. They were the things that they carried. This can be taken both in a literal and a metaphorical sense. The things they carried defined each soldier by rank, by specialty, and by character. And while I am not sure that any of us here would want to carry 60 pounds of gear around on a daily basis, the truth is that each and every one of us carries a lot within us. In some measure, that provides clues about who we are as people and as members of society. Much of what we carry on a daily basis is quite revealing about who we are and what our mission seems to be. Children carry books and lunches to school in their backpacks. Young parents carry strollers and bags of diapers and wipes and milk for their babies. We carry groceries home from the supermarket, and we carry trash to the curb or to the dump or the compost pile or the redemption center. Those of us who have pets carry crates and doggy beds, food, treats, and pooper scooper bags to clean up after our pets. Like the soldiers in O'Brien's story, much of what we carry relates to our vocation and our speciality. We carry books and papers, computers and cell phones. We wear clothing that is representative of our nuanced positions in society: suits for attorneys, coveralls for a mechanic, dress casual for the office worker, and scrubs for the medical personnel. Tradespeople carry tools packed into boxes and compartments in their trucks. Fire and police people and EMTs carry radios and all sorts of life-saving gear. Married couples carry rings on their fingers to openly show their love and commitment for one another. We carry commitments of time to family, friends, work, church, and other community organizations. We carry the responsibility of being citizens, of paying our taxes, and voting in elections. Don't forget Tuesday to go out and vote if you haven't already. We carry many intangible things as well: skills, education, ideologies, knowledge, experience, values, and morals that we have inherited from our ancestors and from life experiences. We carry wounds and habits, wisdom and compassion. We carry love. We carry culture and prejudice and privilege. We can't always put a specific weight or gravity on these things, yet we know they are real because we often feel their weight pulling on us. We also carry values. I remember when I first went for a long hike in Vermont with some friends of mine, we had decided to hike along a section of the Long Trail from Camel's Hump down to Huntington Gap. It was a shorter hike, only about 10 miles over the course of 3 days. And at the end of the first day hike, we set up our camp next to a shelter and we started to cook our dinner. My friend Tara pulled out this huge Pyrex dish with a lid on it, which was full of cookies. The rest of us just stood there stunned. This dish had to weigh at least 3.5 pounds if it weighed an ounce. And she had humped this thing, this monstrosity, back into the back country. 3.5 pounds of dead weight. Of course, we all offer to lighten her load by eating some of the cookies. But we kept kidding her and asking if she had thought to bring the kitchen sink as well. I asked her why she had brought such a heavy dish on our drive home, and she replied that it was because she didn't want to bring plastic into the back country because it was bad for the environment, and because she had just read about an article about how toxic chemicals in plastic leached into food wrapped in plastic. I was pretty impressed. Her devotion of being an eco-friendly and healthy meant that she was willing to carry an extra 3.5 pounds, 10 miles for 3 days, up and down pretty steep terrain. Now that is dedication. Although the dish had a specific weight of 3.5 pounds, the value of her conviction lightened the load. And it wasn't something that bothered her all that much. It was a weight that she carried with great purpose. Sometimes we aren't even aware of what we carry, but we carry them nonetheless. We carry genes and dispositions to certain diseases. We carry viruses and bacteria that we share with all other living beings. We carry shame. We carry blame. And narratives about who we are or who we think we should be. We carry grief. The point is that we carry many things that we are aware of, and probably many more that we are not. It wasn't for me until my 41st year of life that I became aware that I was carrying an unknown diagnosed learning difference. I just assumed that all the challenges that I had experienced were the same ones that everybody else experienced. I wasn't different, right? If I couldn't do the things as easily as other people did, maybe it was because I wasn't trying hard enough. I mean, other people could read books, write papers, balance school and work and a social life with ease, and I thought, so should I. And so, through my adolescence, my teens, my 20s, and in 30s, I carried something that at times was quite difficult to bear. Now that I have gotten to know that part of myself, I've been better able to understand what it means to be a person who carries dyslexia. I have learned, at least for the most part, how to carry that part of me more lightly. My load is now lighter, even though I continue to carry that dyslexic part of me. It's lighter because I've accepted it and know about it and know how that affects the way that I interact with the world. And here is the corollary lesson. If we become in some form the things that we carry, don't you think it behooves us to, on occasion, take the time to look at the things that we have accumulated in our packs and decide from time to time if we still need to carry them? Maybe we need to let some things go. Maybe we need to add some things. A couple of years ago, before discovering my learning difference, I took a 4-day backcountry telemarketing workshop in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. At the end of our trip, our instructor, we had just gotten down from our trip and we were in the parking lot, and he spread out these big tarps. And we were ready to go home, but he made us take everything out of our packs and sort them into 3 piles. The things that we actually used, the things that we needed to carry for safety, and the things that we didn't use. What was amazing is that when we went through that operation, just about everyone was able to eliminate like 8 to 12 pounds of gear from their pack. That was a 25 to 30% reduction in our pack weight, which is a lot when you are skinning up a mountain top to go skiing down. Our instructor's advice is a good one for more than winter camping. It is, I think, a great metaphor for our lives. It is important to be aware of the things that we carry. It allows us to be mindful of what we are carrying. It helps us to be thoughtful of what we want to carry into the future. It also helps us be more aware of our own limitations as human beings. Carrying a lot of weight is something that we can't always do. We do this with physical things. We sometimes do this when we clean out our kitchens around seasonal holidays or whatnot. So why not do this cleaning, this sorting for the rest of our lives? I believe this is a foundational spiritual practice, part of that reflection and self-examination. We start this when from time to time we create intentional space to unpack the things that we are carrying. And unpacking, we can ask ourselves, is this thing that I am carrying useful? Or is it just dead weight in my pack? Do I need to carry this with me now? Or perhaps there's a different item that I can carry that will fill that need, that's lighter, that's easier to manage. It's not an easy task, but not a hard one either. It is, however, a task that can reap huge rewards and lightening our load so we don't become weighted down like those grunts who felt that their sole, S-O-U-L, purpose was to lug things around simply for the sake of moving them. On the one side, we have the example of Frederick the mouse representing one extreme, because he traveled so lightly with sunbeams and colors and words, compared with the soldiers who carried 60 pounds worth of gear on their backs every day. To me, this is the essence of the difference between Frederick, the little mouse's attitude, and the attitude of the olive drab men of the 2 stories. I aspire to be more like Frederick, yet I am aware that life often requires me to carry more. Hopefully, with some amount of skill and practice and planning, I can find an answer that lies somewhere between these 2 extremes. So far, we have looked at the things that we carry as individuals, but what do we think about the things that we carry as a liberal religious movement? This observation is not only useful to our own individual lives, it is a question that we should ask our congregation and our denomination too. I believe that as we head into a sabbatical time apart this next spring, that the congregation will have a time to reflect on the things that you carry and the things that I carry and how they serve us so that we can adjust our packs when I come back in the fall. At our Unitarian Universalist Association General Assembly in Pittsburgh, PA, our denomination will be reviewing the Article 2 of our UUA bylaws, the part of our bylaws that states our UU principles. Our delegates will potentially add, amend, or possibly retire parts of those principles and purposes and sources that we might carry better as a faith. In doing these things, as a congregation and as an association, I hope that we can continue to evolve as a congregation of faith into an even more nimble and life-affirming place, where we embrace the wisdom of life that we carry with us into all the days to come. By engaging in this process of self-reflection and examination, it is my hope that we will continue to uphold the very essence of our Unitarian Universalist tradition of not simply accepting the status quo, but instead seeking to understand where truth of the Spirit is calling us in this crazy and amazing time in history. In doing so, we shall magnify our power by engaging our best of our energies and bringing the best of our passions into the service of Spirit to our fellow human beings and to the interconnected web of which we are a part. As we wind down our time together today, I hope that you will all find some time in the beauty of these mild autumn days to go for a walk and reflect on the things that you carry. Find those things that bring meaning and purpose and lightness to your being. What do you carry? What do you need to carry? And what can you let go of or carry more efficiently to lighten your load as you journey forward? With peace, love, and gratitude, journey on. I now invite you to join in singing our closing hymn, 183, The Wind of Change Forever Blown. As we extinguish our Unitarian Universalist chalice flame, symbol of faith, hope, love, and connection, let us be reminded of the things that we carry that nourish, or maybe not so much nourish, our soul. And let us be reminded that although our time of worship has come to an end, our service to each other and the world of which we are a part has just begun. I now invite you to join in singing our benediction.
Let us go forth into the week ahead, striving to be faithful to our life's journeys, serving the needs of the earth and its inhabitants, sharing in the spirit of love with all we say and do, sharing in the spirit of love with all we say and do, sharing in the spirit of love with all we say and do. Blessed be, blessed be, blessed, blessed be.
Thank you, everyone, and for those on Zoom, please stay on so you can join our virtual coffee hour.